Montana, August 1880. A guy rode fast over a hill, his horse sweaty and panting. Dust stuck to his coat and hat. The sun glinted off a gun tied to his saddle. Down below, in a spot with some trees and wilted willows, was a beat-up homestead. Lachlan Tamarin stopped his horse at the edge. Smoke was still coming from what was left of the barn, and the cabin's door was barely hanging on. He got off his horse slowly, holding his gun, his boots crunching on dry grass. He wasn't looking for a fight, but he'd seen enough to know trouble might find him. Something moved behind the cabin, a quick flash of a light blue skirt. He raised his gun a little. Then a shaky, scared voice called out, "Don't shoot." A woman stepped out from behind a broken fence, her hands up, her dress stained with blood. Lachlan could tell it wasn't hers as she got closer. She looked young, maybe 20, with messy hair and cracked lips. She limped as she walked. He lowered his gun. "You okay, miss?" She stared at him for a moment, then her legs gave out. Lachlan caught her before she hit the ground. Her name was Ada Cowboy, 22 years old. Her husband died 4 months ago, and she'd been living on the land with her 2 kids, trying to keep things together. 2 days ago, 3 men showed up. They stole her horse and took all the food. When she fought back, they tied her up and locked her kids in a cellar. They left yesterday morning. She whispered, her voice weak. They said they'd come back for more. I couldn't open the cellar door. I tried so hard. Lachlan pried the cellar door open with an old crowbar, and the kids inside looked up, confused and quiet. A boy and a girl, both under 10. The girl, about 5, hugged Ada's leg as soon as she was free. The boy, Elijah, stared at Lachlan. "Are you gonna hurt us?" "No," Lachlan said softly. "I'm here to help." He looked at Ada. She was shaking, holding both kids, her face pale and tired. She hadn't slept or eaten. Her hands were scratched up. He made a choice right then, one he wouldn't change. "You all need to come with me. It's not safe here." Ada's eyes got teary. "Where?" "There's a small town south of here. I've got a place. It's not fancy, but it's safe." She looked at her kids, then back at him. "I don't know you." "I know, but I won't hurt you." She paused, then nodded. They buried 2 dead goats behind the barn, packed wood. Little food was left, and left a place behind by sunset. Lachlan's place was by a creek with pine trees nearby. He built it himself, 1 room, a small stable, a well. It wasn't much, but it was clean and safe. Ada's hand shook when he gave her water and a blanket. She kept her kids close, watching every shadow. When he lit the fire, she jumped. He didn't ask questions, just cooked beans and set out bread. Elijah ate like he was starving. The little girl, Elsie, stayed glued to Ada and wouldn't talk. Later, when the kids were asleep on a mat in the corner, Ada sat by the fire. Her shoulders were slumped, her fingers twisting her skirt. "I thought I could handle it," she said quietly. "I thought I could keep everything together." "You did," Lachlan said. "You kept them alive." Her eyes got teary again. She shook her head. "I'm not strong. You are." She covered her face with her hands. "They said they'd come back. They laughed. They said they'd take me next time. I can't go through that again." Lachlan sat beside her, not touching, just close. The fire crackled. She turned to him suddenly, her voice breaking. "Don't hurt me. I'll be your wife." The words hit him hard. He didn't say anything, just looked at her, really looked, and saw how scared she was, how tired, how she was barely holding on. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said softly. She blinked, surprised. "I just want you to feel safe." She covered her mouth as tears fell. "I don't know what to do anymore." "Just sit here," he said. "That's enough for tonight." She leaned toward him slowly, unsure, and rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. They sat like that for a long time. The fire died down, and outside, the wind rustled. The trees. Inside, it was quiet for the first time in days. The next morning, Ada was up first. She washed her face at the pump and tied her hair back. Lachlan was chopping wood when she came to him. "I can work," she said. "You don't have to. I want to." So he let her. She swept the floor, washed the kids' clothes, and fixed a tear in his shirt. She moved carefully, like she was waiting for something bad to happen. But every time he passed, he nodded or said, "Thanks." Slowly, she started to relax. That night, she cooked a simple stew with potatoes and pork. It made the cabin feel warm. Lachlan watched her from across the table. She caught him looking once, and for a second, smiled. Days went by. Elijah helped with the animals. Elsie started talking again, mostly to her mom. Ada laughed once, soft and surprised, and the sound stuck with Lachlan. One night under a starry sky, Ada stood beside him outside the cabin. The air was cool. The kids were asleep. "I meant it, you know," she said quietly. He looked at her. "What?" "I'd be your wife. You don't owe me that." "I know. I just wanted you to know." He nodded slowly, then brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "I'm not ready," she said. "I'll wait," he said simply. She looked at him for a long moment, then took his hand and held it. Just held it. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. By early September, frost covered the grass in the mornings, thin and sparkly. Ada started lighting the fire before dawn, her hand steady now. Lachlan woke to the sound of wood scraping and pots clinking, not the heavy quiet of fear that used to cling to her. He started teaching Elijah how to set traps by the trees, and the boy paid close attention, asking smart questions. Ada watched from the porch sometimes, holding Elsie, her face calm but hard to read. She didn't say much during the lessons, but once, when Elijah brought in a rabbit he caught, she touched Lachlan's arm without thinking. "Thanks," she said, not looking at him, then went inside. That night, Lachlan found her by the creek, washing a shirt in the cold water. "Did you live alone before?" she asked, wringing out the cloth. He crouched beside her, sleeves rolled up from chopping wood. "No, I had a brother. He died 3 winters ago near Powder River." Her hand stopped in the water. "Was it sickness?" "No, he was shot." Lachlan looked at the pine hills. "He got in a fight over a fence. Some folks think land splits people up. He didn't, but they did." Ada's mouth tightened. "That's how James died." He didn't ask who James was. The name felt heavy enough. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded, then twisted the shirt dry. "Do you miss him?" Lachlan asked. "I did," she said, "until fear took over everything. Now, I just miss who I was when he was alive." She stood, water dripping from her sleeves. "I don't even know what I'm turning into now." He didn't try to answer that evening. She let the kids sleep on the bed while she sat by the fire, fixing a shirt. The quiet between her and Lachlan was comfortable, filled with the fire's crackle and the sound of her needle. "I never planned to stay here," she said without looking up. "We were going to move east in spring." James had a cousin in Ohio, with a job at a tannery. Lachlan leaned forward in his chair. "You could still go." "I could," she said, looping the thread. "But I won't." She set the shirt down. "The mail wagon came by once since we got here. I could have asked you to stop it. I didn't." He nodded. "I noticed. I don't want a new place. I want a steady one." Lachlan didn't reply, just poured her some warm cider from his cup. Their fingers touched when he handed it to her. She held the cup, but didn't drink. "Would you have helped me if I didn't have kids?" "I don't take people," he said. "But I'd have helped you. Yeah. Even if you didn't beg." She looked at the cup. "You're not like other men I've known." He smiled a little. "People say I'm too quiet." She set the cup down and stood. "I don't mind quiet anymore." She walked to the bed, settled between her kids, and looked back at him once. He tended the fire, watching the embers fade. When the wind picked up outside, she didn't move. Neither did Elsie. The next morning, Ada was humming while kneading dough, flour on her arms. Lachlan came in from the barn and stopped at the door, watching her. She didn't notice him at first. "I forgot I knew that song," she said when she looked up. "My mom used to sing it while she worked." He stepped closer. "That's a nice thing to remember." She kept kneading, her hands steady. "I think I'm starting to remember more." He nodded, not pushing her to explain. Later, after the bread cooled, and Elijah went to check traps, Lachlan passed the well and saw Ada sitting by the drying racks, sewing a dress for Elsie from an old sack. She didn't look up. There's land west of the creek, he said. Gets lots of sun, good for a garden. I've got seeds in the cellar. I'd like to try and spring, she said. He crouched beside her, watching her sow. Then will. She looked at him. If you want. Ada paused, then reached out and put her hand over his. I do. By the time snow fell on the high hills, the cabin felt like more than just a house. Lachlan built a second bed by the fire from pine and canvas. The kids drew a picture on the wall with charcoal, a sun, and stick figures. Ada didn't wash it off. She said it made the place feel like home. Lachlan started chopping extra wood. At dawn, stacking it where the wind couldn't reach. Ada saved grease from cooking, mixing it with salt and ash to make soap. Her hands didn't shake anymore, and her voice sounded stronger, not loud, but sure. One evening, while Elsie napped, and Elijah was out collecting pine cones, Ada stood by the fire, drying her hair with a cloth. He asked if we're staying forever. She said, wringing the cloth. I told him I don't know what forever is, but this place feels steady. Lachlan was setting the kettle on the fire. That's what I wanted to build, something that can take a hit and still stand. Ada hung the cloth on a chair. Did you ever think about having a family? Kids, I mean. He leaned on the mantel. I thought about it once, before the war and the trail took over. She nodded, looking at the window. The sun was setting, light spilling across the floor. I used to think wanting calm was selfish, she said. Not anymore. She picked up Elijah's shirt to mend. You've given them more than a house. They sleep without being scared. Now, Lachlan poked the fire. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough. Ada folded the shirt. It is for them. And for me? A gust of wind slipped through the doorframe. He pressed a wool scrap against it. We'll need to fix that before it gets colder. I can sew it in, she said. I've fixed worse. He looked at her, and her eyes held his a bit longer than usual. She stirred the soup, tasted it. Needs pepper, she said quietly. I'll check the pouch, Lachlan said, stepping beside her. Their hands brushed over the spice tin. Mather pulled away. Later, after the kids were tucked, under a quilt Ada made from old clothes, she stood in the doorway, looking at the stars. The wind was calm. Snow sparkled on the fence posts. Lachlan joined her, pulling his coat tight. I used to think stars were just pretty, she said. Now I think they remind us there's more than what we've lost. He didn't speak, just looked up with her. She turned to him. I'd like to plant corn and beans next year. I know how to string them. You'll have a big field if you want. I don't want it alone. The words came steady, clear. He looked at her, and she didn't look away. I've been waiting for you to say that, he said. She touched his jaw, then rested her head on his chest. Inside, the cabin was warm. The fire burned low, steady, strong. Outside, the stars watched quietly, like the earth had finally let something grow by mid-November. Snow was heavy, so Lachlan stored the wagon wheels and greased the axles. He kept the mule close to the stable and hung pine branches over the roof to protect it from snow. Inside, the cabin stayed warm. Most nights, Ada read from an old book her mom gave her, her voice soft, while the kids stared at the pages like they held secrets. One morning, while Elsie wrote letters in the fireplace ash, Ada stood at the window, her breath fogging the glass. Do you work in winter? She asked. Lachlan looked up from oiling a strap. Only if someone's animals go missing or a neighbor needs help. Why? I've been sewing when the kids sleep. I thought I could trade some when... The road's clear. You'll get good money for it, he said. Maybe more than good. She turned, arms crossed. I don't want to rely on what you save. I want to do my part. You already do. She didn't argue, just nodded and went to the cupboard. She didn't like compliments. He'd figured that out later that week, when the wind calmed. Lachlan took Elijah to a ridge where elk sometimes passed. They didn't find tracks but marked a path with ash and stones for spring. When they got back, Ada was at the table, Elsie asleep beside her, cheek on a half-sewn dress. She fell waiting, Ada said, smoothing Elsie's hair. She's been asking if we'll have a Christmas like when James was alive. Lachlan set his gloves by the stove. What was it like? An orange in their stockings, she said. Some candy, if we had extra. James sang. Not great, but loud. She laughed softly, touching the cloth. I thought I'd make a pie from dried berries. There's a bit of honey left. He nodded. We'll gather pine cones, hang them with string. She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped closer. Would you sing if I asked? I would, he said, but I can't promise it'll sound good. She rested her forehead on his chest for a second. That's not what matters. They didn't touch again that night, but when she tucked the kids in, she hummed an old, warm tune. The next day, Ada gave Lakeland a folded wool scarf she'd made. I didn't know if you wanted, she said, but I wanted to give it. He looked at her. I'll wear it every day. She looked away, but her mouth curved a little. That night, a storm hit, and they stayed close inside. Lakeland read from an old book, the pages worn. Ada sewed by the fire, her fingers steady. The kids asked him questions, now Elijah about how trees move in the wind, Elsie about whether bears sleep like people. When the wind howled, Ada checked the shutters and sat back down without a word. She was careful, but not scared anymore. Lakeland leaned close enough to feel her warmth. You sleep better now, she nodded. Because I know what I'm waking up to. She set her sewing aside. I don't know what's next, but I wanted to come here with you. He didn't speak, just took her hand. She wove her fingers through his, and in the quiet, with the fire low and the wind soft, it was clear. Everything, the pain, the fear, the silence had led to this, not a spoken promise, but a life-starting dot. By early March. The snow melted to patches by the creek, and the ground turned soft and ready. Ada sat outside most afternoons, sorting seeds or measuring garden rows with string and a stick. Lakeland built a fence around the garden with cedar posts he'd cut last summer. Elijah hammered nails where he was told, and Elsie gathered small branches for kindling. The days fell into a calm rhythm, not rushed. One morning, Ada watched finches fly in and out of the willows. Lakeland crossed the yard, boots muddy. Saw tracks by the south field, he said. Maybe mule deer. I'll boil water for the hide if you get one, she said, brushing hair from her cheek. I want to make moccasins for the kids. Their shoes are worn out. He leaned on the fence. You're always thinking ahead. I have to, she said. It's how I keep them safe. But I don't feel like I'm scrambling now. You're not, he said. She paused, then stepped toward him. I keep thinking about a porch, just big enough for a bench to catch the morning sun. We can start next week, he said. A place for us to sit, grow old. He brushed dirt from her sleeve. It's yours if you want it. I want it with you. That night, after the kids were asleep under a quilt Ada made, she stood by the fire, letting her hair down. The firelight caught in it. Lakeland looked up from his book. I've been thinking, she said softly, about what we are. He set the book down. Okay, we've lived and worked together, and I've let you stay close. But I want more than just comfort, Lakeland. He stood, not rushing. What do you want? I want to be your wife, not because I'm scared or need safety, but because I love you. He stepped close, took her hand, and kissed her wrist. Then be mine, he said. I've loved you since the night you sat by my fire and didn't jump. She leaned into him, and he held her like it was the easiest thing in the world. They got married by the garden, under a spring blue sky. Elijah held a ring Lakeland got from his mom, and Elsie tossed pine needles instead of petals. Ada wore a gray dress with a faded hem she'd traded for. Lakeland wore her scarf. A preacher rode through the mud with a Bible and whiskey, said the vows simply, and left. Ada didn't cry, she smiled, calm and full, like someone who'd walked through a storm and found her way. They shared bread and dried apples, and the kids played by a porch post Ada had marked for building. As the sun set, she and Lakeland sat on the step, her head on his shoulder. Will it last? She asked softly. He kissed her temple. It already has. Years went by, but the porch got built that spring, just like she wanted. The garden grew beans and corn, and the kids outgrew their moccasins, starting to build things themselves. Ada kept sewing, trading in town for sugar and cloth. Lakeland taught Elijah to track and fix bridles. Elsie learned to bake from her mom. They all grew into something solid. On warm evenings, with the wind soft and the sun golden. Lachlan and Ada sat on the porch, her hand in his, her cheek on his shoulder. No fear, no running, just love.